All right, let's dive into one of the biggest mysteries out there, but we're going to look at it through a lens you might not expect: physics. We're going to explore the science behind that thing you're experiencing right now, that constant, intimate, and, let's be honest, kind of baffling feeling of being, well, you.
I mean, really think about it for a second. What actually creates that unique, subjective feeling of being you? It feels so real, so solid, right? But where does it come from? This is a question that has kept philosophers and scientists up at night for centuries.
And here's where we hit a wall. You know, the kind of physics that explains why a ball rolls down a hill? That simple, predictable cause and effect stuff? Well, it just doesn't cut it when you try to apply it to consciousness. It completely misses the richness of our inner world. And that's a huge problem, especially when we're trying to figure out better ways to help people who are struggling with that very sense of self.
So, where do we go from here? Well, here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll start with the mystery of the self, then we'll dive into reality's quantum rules. After that, we're going to get into some wild territory. Your brain is a wave, what that means for therapy at a quantum level, and finally, the big one, reshaping your reality.
Okay, so we're starting with the big mystery. We really need a new way of looking at all this. And hey, this isn't just some academic thought experiment. Figuring this out could totally revolutionize how we approach mental health.
And to find that new way of thinking, we have to leave our comfortable, everyday world behind. We're diving deep into the weird, wonderful, and frankly mind-bending world of quantum mechanics. You know, the rules that really run the show at the tiniest, most fundamental levels of reality.
And this is a huge shift in how we see everything. The old classical view, think of it like a game of billiards. You hit one ball, it hits another. It's all predictable, right? A simple chain of cause and effect. But the quantum view, it pretty much flips the whole table over. It says that reality isn't really real until something observes it, that everything is just a cloud of possibilities, of probabilities, not certainties.
Okay, a key idea here is something called superposition. The best way to think about it is like a spinning coin. While that coin is spinning in the air, is it heads or tails? Well, in a quantum sense, it's kind of both at the same time. It's just a blur of potential. It's only when you, the observer, catch it and look that it collapses into one single reality, either heads or tails. That's superposition in a nutshell.
And then things get even weirder with something called non-locality. Einstein himself famously called it spooky action at a distance. Basically, you can have two particles that are linked, or entangled, and whatever you do to one of them instantly affects the other one, no matter how far apart they are, even if they're on opposite sides of the universe. Just let that sink in. It points to this deeply interconnected reality where our whole idea of distance just kind of falls apart.
So okay, spinning coins, spooky action. What on earth does any of this have to do with you, with the feeling of being you inside your head? Well, here's where it gets really interesting. A lot of scientists are starting to think that our brains might actually be quantum machines. And the evidence is pretty compelling. For starters, the little electrical zaps in your brain, they have to pass through these microscopic gates called ion channels. And these channels are so tiny that quantum weirdness is almost certainly happening there. So maybe our brains aren't like classic computers at all, but more like quantum ones. And get ready for this. What if space and time aren't even fundamental? What if they're just a user interface that your brain creates to navigate a much deeper, much more connected reality? Wow.
So this gives us a totally new picture of what you are. Forget the idea of a little CEO sitting in your head pulling the levers. What if you, that feeling of me, is more like a single, unified wave of information? A wave that's spread across your entire brain and nervous system, all entangled, all interconnected, and constantly changing based on what it observes.
All right, so this is where all this high-level physics stuff gets super practical. Because if our sense of self really does run on quantum rules, then maybe, just maybe, we can use those same rules to help people, to create real, lasting change through therapy.
Let's take a look at a therapy called Deep Brain Reorienting, or DBR, but through this new quantum lens. So, step 1, you slow everything down. You interrupt that lightning-fast chain reaction from a trigger to an emotional reaction. By doing that, you're changing the probability of which path your brain is going to take. This gives those old, tangled-up traumatic memories a chance to decohere. Remember our spinning coin? It's like you're letting them spin again so they can collapse into a new reality, a new perspective, and that can permanently rewire the brain's landscape.
There's another amazing tool called neurofeedback, or NFB. This is where you literally watch your own brain waves in real time. You could call it recursive self-observation. You become the observer of your own mind. And just like in quantum physics, the simple act of observing, of measuring, actually changes the thing you're looking at. It lets you actively guide your brain out of a state of messy potential and into a state you actually want to be in.
Okay, so what if you combine these two ideas? What happens when you put this powerful therapy together with this powerful self-observation tool? Well, you might get a way to fundamentally reshape your own inner world.
So here's how it could work. First, you'd use neurofeedback to get the brain into the perfect state for this deep work, kind of like tuning an instrument. Then, in the therapy itself, you focus your attention on that orienting tension. You know, that deep primal tensing up you feel right before a shock? The theory is that by holding your attention right there, you can actually put key neurons into a state of quantum superposition.
And this is the incredible part. When your brain is in that state, it's not locked into one single painful story from your past. It's holding all the possibilities at once, multiple life stories, multiple biographical narratives, all swirling around in a state of pure potential. It's a moment of immense possibility, where a new, healthier story can be chosen and collapsed into your new reality.
Which brings us all the way back to the biggest idea from the start of all this, that in the quantum world, it's the act of observation that turns that fuzzy cloud of maybes into a single solid, this is what happened.
So, if that's how reality itself works, then here's the final mind-bending question I want to leave you with. Who or what is the observer of your feeling of me? Because the answer to that might just mean you have a lot more power in creating your own reality than you ever thought possible.